guys? Welcome back to From the Ground Up with the Caldwell brothers. This is our third episode. This is Brandon Caldwell. With me, I got
Drew Caldwell.
Yep. And today we're going to be going over everything Hyrox. Hyrox Dallas. Last time we went over the 100-miler and kind of went over Drew's prep for his first 100-miler, his prep for Rocky Raccoon, which is coming up on February 1st. And now we want to talk Hyrox. So we're going to talk Hyrox doubles. My last competition with one of my best friends, we competed in Hyrox Pro men's doubles. We'll talk the training leading up. We'll talk the event itself. Everything from like being in the Airbnb before the competition, what nutrition looked like leading up. We'll talk about the competition itself, being in the tunnel, highs, lows, everything to do with Hyrox. And then we'll talk about training leading up to Hyrox Miami, which will be in April of this year.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for this episode just because, I mean, I think whenever you hear like Iron Man or like something crazy like that, like you've heard of it and like you kind of know what it is. Mm-hmm. But for Hyrox specifically, like I've had a lot of people question, or they're like what is Hyrox?
What is that?
Never heard of Hyrox. So like give us like what is Hyrox? Like how'd you learn about Hyrox?
Yeah.
Too.
It's actually a good question. I've never even really thought about that. So I got into running in January of last year, obviously, and we ran our first half marathon together, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. But I've always been into just sports in general, and I've never really been elite at anything, and you may disagree, but I've never really been like, yeah, he's going pro and XYZ, whatever it may be. I've always just been good at everything. So I've been trying to find like a sport or some kind of fitness competition that involved everything. And I never really wanted to do CrossFit because I wasn't huge on Olympic lifting, which is easy to say because it's a hard thing to do, but it was just never something that I would say I loved. Like I'm big on, I was into powerlifting, so I did a powerlifting competition, and I love squat, bench, and dead, but doing like the power clean and snatches was never my thing.
Right.
And I was watching, there was some piece of content, I want to say it maybe was Nick, maybe, and I think he did, it was, because they did, what was the race where they did in Vegas when it's not a sanctioned race? You're
talking about like the 300 mile, like
it's just as fast as you can get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
There's no rules.
Yeah.
The Speed Project.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
We were watching that, and he did a podcast with Lucy Davis before they did the Speed Project. And that was the first time I had heard of Lucy. So I checked out kind of like what she competes in and what kind of fitness she was into. And that's the first time I had heard of Hyrox. It seemed like kind of foreign. It seemed way more popular in European countries.
And it is.
I saw it and saw the competition and was like, wow, this looks very live. And there's no Olympic lifting. This is something I could definitely do. So naturally, Billy was coaching me at the time, so I reached out to him and we talked about Hyrox, and I'm pretty sure it was either that day or the next day we just signed up for Hyrox Dallas. And this was like 5 to 6 months out from Hyrox Dallas, 4, 5, 6 months out, because I started posting videos. I remember when it was somewhere around 130, 150 days out from Hyrox Dallas, and did a whole series on Instagram around preparing for that. So yeah, that's how I got like introduced to it and started training for it, really.
Yeah, I mean you're already kind of running, I guess, like training for like the half marathon. So like whenever you looked at that, like was there anything that you thought like you'd need to improve like beforehand? Because I mean, Hyrox is like a decent amount of running. Yeah. Like I guess more in on like how good do you have to be at like some certain thing to like compete in Hyrox, and like what are like the movements like? Yeah. Because whenever I explain it, I'm talking about like CrossFit-ish. That's kind of how I explain it, but it's not really like heavy like lifting, like the clean like clean and jerk or like different things like that? Like what's
Yeah.
specific about it that like you had to improve at?
So if I were to answer this question for someone who was interested in it and wanted to get into it, I'll kind of answer it from that perspective. For me, I think that I was always strong and I knew that I could lift heavy things. So I figured, okay, it makes sense. There's a little bit of lifting involved in this. There's a heavy sled push. I could definitely be good at Hyrox, right? It is a running race. I want that to be very clear. You have to be good at running. And I forgot who said it. I think it was Rich Ryan, but said something along the lines of a large percentage of the race, if not, I forget which percentage it is, 60, 70, 80% of the race is running. So if you want to get faster, the best thing to do if you want to get better at Hyrox is to become a better runner.
Right.
And that isn't to say that you shouldn't be efficient on the ergs, because the ergs are a huge part of the race, obviously, and getting better at rowing, getting better at skiing. The way that I look at the ergs at this point in time, and that'll probably change. Once again, I'm only a year in. There's some of these guys that have been doing it for a long time. So, but the way that I look at the ergs at this point is the more efficient you can be on the ergs, so you go into the run more fresh. That's the ideal kind of way to approach it. It's more, if I can be efficient on the erg, and maybe let's say I row or ski, whatever it may be, 5 to 10 seconds slower than I know I could, but I go into the run super fresh, that's how I'm going to be super effective at the race. It's not like how fast can I do the row or ski, and can I be first in the row or ski when you go back and look at your stats at the end of the race. That's not how I look at it. I look at it more as, can I be so efficient with my musculature on the ergs that it doesn't tax me, and it's more of a, when I row and ski, I don't want to say it's more of a break, but it kind of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Can you explain to like the general public, for people that don't understand what Hyrox is or have never heard of it, like how many miles is it like in the race, and like how much time can you knock off with just being good at running? Like if, say, whenever we first started, we were running like a 10-minute pace, like how long that would take in like a Hyrox if you were to run all the miles, compared to like if you were at like a 7-minute pace, compared to like what like a good time is considered like in Hyrox.
It's a good question. In Hyrox, there's 8 1K loops, 1 kilometer loops, because they measure differently than we do in the U.S., obviously. So
0.6 miles, right?
Yeah, it's like 0.62 miles, I think, if you break it down all the way. So you have 8 0.62 mile loops where you're going to do the events in between each of the loops. So you start out, you run your 1K to start, and then you go to the ski, and then you run a 1K, and then you go to the next event, and then it goes back and forth like that the whole time. So it ends up being 8 times 0.62. It's like 4.8 miles of running. But shout out to Simon. I was talking to him about this yesterday. Simon works at BPN, and he's really big into Hyrox, and I've picked his brain a ton on it already, and he's completely shifted my way of how I look at Hyrox. But the way he described it, he's like, dude, you're not getting better. Like, you are getting better at running, but he was saying you're getting better at running 1 kilometer sprints. That's completely different than getting better at running a marathon or a half marathon. And don't get me wrong, if your marathon time is getting better, are you going to be a better runner? Absolutely. But the race itself is different. So for me, even how I look at a prep now is different than how I'm going to look at it in a month, because how I'm looking at it now is like my volume was 40 to 45 miles a week going into Hyrox Dallas, and that's not counting the running I was doing during the circuits, which it ended up being like 50 to 55 miles a week. But for someone who just got into running last year, that's a lot of volume, dude.
Which, yeah, keep in mind, I'm running on average 55 miles a week training for a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in Hyrox.
Yeah.
With most of your runs being like speed runs.
And
implementing Hyrox and weight training, which is insane to me, but
that was kind of the beauty in it. It's like you sign up for this, you have really no idea how to train for it because it's still so new, and there's still so many different theories and ideas on what's the best way to train for an event, because there's so many different modalities, 9 specifically, that it's like what blend of each is the most ideal? How much running volume should you be doing? And even after talking to Simon yesterday, it's very obvious now. It's more of like training for a half marathon running wise while you're doing it. Because for me, I thought the more mileage I'm doing while I'm training for it, oh, I'm going to be a better Hyrox athlete. But that's not necessarily always the case, bro. And I think that that's what's cool about it too, is you can still get conditioning work in on the bike, like when I do Zwift, or whether that's going in and just doing erg work at a zone 2 pace. So that's, you know, skiing at a 205 pace, rowing at a 205 pace. And yeah, it's just, it's I would say it's challenging, and that's what makes it fun. Is like there is no exact right way to do it right now. It's going to be different for every athlete depending on what you need to get better at. And right now for me specifically, obviously once my foot is good again, but that's becoming a better runner. I think that's how I'm going to shave off the most time, and just becoming more efficient on the ergs. So that's why I have a lot of days where it's just Hyrox erg work and it's zone 2.
Yeah. So I guess we kind of already talked about like how it started and like what got you into Hyrox specifically. But like what did training look like, and what kind of like, what lessons did you learn like whenever you first started, because I know at some points you kind of like compared yourself to like other people.
Yeah.
In terms of like how fast you were doing something. And like what would you tell somebody that like if they were to start getting into Hyrox training that like they're doing just fine? Like, because I know you were in that boat with comparing times and like with different styles of training, and I think you just learned that, and like you literally just said it, like your intensity and like volume was insane.
Yeah.
And like it probably wasn't as crazy as like these other people that are training for Hyrox.
Which, if you want to be real, that's probably why my foot is the way it is right now. And that's something, that would be something I would say to anyone who's thinking about getting into it, is it does get really fun and it does get really involved, but the more you do, and I like, everyone always says like comparison is the thief of joy, and I think there's some truth to that, but I also think there's some truth to knowing where you stand. So it's like, yeah, you're going to compare yourself to know like these are the best athletes and I rank here against them, which is like way far away from them at the current moment. And this is where like amateurs are and I rank here from them. So it's a natural thing to do. But your first question was, what did training look like? I'll kind of give, because I've had a lot of people ask this and I think this would help people out that are listening. I do want them to take away from this, though, that my volume was too high at one point in time, and I didn't realize it, and that's probably why my foot is the way that it is now.
Yeah.
But this is kind of how my week was set up, and then I'll explain how I'm changing it going into the next Hyrox event. But usually Monday was a zone 2 run in the morning, and then I would do a upper body strength session at night. Tuesdays were Hyrox days specifically, but I would also do speed work. This was in the beginning of it. So I would do speed work early, Hyrox at night. Now, this is the distinction I want to make that a lot of people don't realize, is when I say Hyrox, dude, those workouts can look completely different based on what you're trying to get out of it. If you go into that Hyrox workout and it's more of, I want to get more conditioning work in today, and you just call it Hyrox, it could just be, I'm on the rower, I'm on the ski, and I'm on the Echo bike, but I'm keeping my heart rate below 135. You know what I mean? So that's like when I say like erg work or like erg days, I could say Hyrox, but that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? My heart rate isn't through the roof. But in the beginning, I didn't realize that. So I would do speed work in the morning and then a full-on Hyrox session at night. And this is like, you know, zone 3, zone 4. I'm running hard, like I'm doing run intervals in between.
Yeah, and whenever you say speed work, like you're talking like you're just running, and then you do your Hyrox work at night.
At night, yeah. And it would probably be like a 45-minute, like full-on circuit that I'm like busting my ass.
Yeah.
So
2 times in one day, you're like completely getting after it.
Which I think I had the right idea here, because I had heard to make like your hard days hard and your easy days easy. So I was making my hard days hard, but like I was making my hard days hard and the easy days were like moderately easy, and that's not how it should be. So Wednesday I would then do another easy run in the morning and legs at night, and then Thursday I would do Hyrox again, and it would be a big Hyrox circuit once again, and then I would do usually some form of like an easy run in the morning, and it may be an interval based depending on the week. but usually easy run in the morning, and then Hyrox at night again on Thursday. Friday would be more of a recovery run in the morning, and then I would do upper strength again. So I would do upper strength twice a week, legs once a week, and then Saturday would be a long run usually. But when I broke that down, there were way too many training sessions that my heart rate was in zone 3 and 4, and it was some weeks it would be 3 to 4 sessions a week, and you may be able to pull that off one time, but I mean, dude, you start adding up consecutive weeks where you're constantly in that zone 3 and 4, dude, it'll catch up with you. And that's what a lot of people, and I'm people, like, that's why I'm talking about it now. That way, if someone is getting into Hyrox, they can learn from me. Know whenever you're sending, like, know the days when you're planning your week out, know which workouts you're really getting after it, and become very intentional with what you're looking to get out of the workouts. Now, like I told you how I'm changing it going forward. Now I put a lot more emphasis on putting my strength training in a position that it benefits Hyrox specifically. So squatting, like I don't do like low bar squat anymore, because I was doing low bar squat and I would still squat 350 to 400 pounds for reps just because I was used to always doing that.
Heavyweight.
Yeah, and I realized like there may be some benefit to that, but for me, I think that the takeaways were a lot more than anything positive I was getting out of that. So now it's just high bar. I'm focusing on depth and how can I benefit that with running. I'm doing a lot of split squats, and I mix in erg work a lot of the time after my strength sessions just to get a little bit more conditioning in where I can.
Yeah.
And yeah, like really sending it on a Hyrox workout probably once a week at this point. And that's the most. And just now, after talking to Simon, I'm definitely going to adjust my running volume as I get heavier into prep when I get closer to Miami. It probably won't be as many miles, but just being a lot more intentional with each Hyrox session that I have planned.
Yeah. I got like 2 questions. The first one, so for people listening, like I guess kind of the misconception that we had whenever we first got into running was like, if I start running, like I can't put on size, like I can't be big. And you kind of listen to like your week where like you're running quite a bit. You're doing Hyrox workouts.
Yeah.
And you're only doing 3 lifting workouts a week. And like for someone like listening to that, it's like, dude, like I can't put on muscle doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like we could talk about this later, but I've seen people at this Hyrox event and like that's far from the truth. Like these people at this Hyrox event, every single person that I saw was jacked. And it was crazy. That was mind blowing to me. Was like these people train Hyrox and they run a lot and they're all huge.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess that's my version of huge. But like, I mean, these people are they're shredded and they have a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like a runner builder. It's obviously not like a bodybuilder build, but like these people are jacked.
This is what we talk about. It's and I didn't even realize this. So we have at the supplement stores that we run, we have in-body machines. And if you don't know what an in-body machine, it measures your skeletal muscle mass, your body fat percentage, your body fat mass. It just goes into a lot more depth. So you're not just looking at your total body weight.
Through just because people ask this question all the time too, through like electrical impedance. So it goes faster or slower through muscle or fat.
Yeah.
Which is a really unique like machine.
Yeah.
Like you can't find really anything else like it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, people love to like, is it the most accurate thing in the world? No, a DEXA scan is probably going to be your most accurate, but it's a $5,000 to $6,000 machine, and it's going to give you a lot more of a baseline than just looking at the the number on a scale. Yeah. But anyway, I did an in-body scan, and I hadn't done one since I started Hyrox. Okay, and my skeletal muscle mass, the most I had ever had was 98 point something skeletal muscle mass. And obviously when I started running and doing Hyrox a lot more, I leaned out quite a bit, and I was doing it more so because I felt more functional and healthy in everyday life. I wouldn't have thought that I was putting as much muscle on my frame as I was, but I did an in-body scan and I was at like 100.5 skeletal muscle mass. And for me, that was, and I don't say that to brag. I say that because it was mind-blowing to me. It was the first time I realized, wow, I can only strength train 3 or 4 times a week instead of 6. and still get the same effect while running a lot and doing these circuit based workouts. And I think a lot of it comes down to these circuit based workouts, like your rowing, your squat to pressing, you're pushing a heavy sled. Like these are like old time, just simple push pull with resistance against you. Like you're gonna build muscle, and it was a lot more fun.
And I'll say this is from someone too, because like people talk about all the time, like eat more, like gain. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like more calories, like you're gonna gain.
Uh-huh.
But this is a person like you I'm talking about that specifically trained for size at one point.
That was it.
You specifically trained for size, and also one of the most like dialed people that I know in terms of like nutrition. Like
Yeah, probably to my demise sometimes.
Yeah, you don't go off plan on anything. You cook all your food. Like it's like ground beef, chicken, rice, potatoes, like 24/7, and you're eating like 5 or 6 meals a day. So like there's not like a difference from like how you were eating whenever you were training to put on size compared to like how you are now. The only thing that changed was
training style.
Yeah, your training style, which that was mind blowing to me. It was like, that's really the only thing that changed. Like your eating didn't change. And like usually that's what causes like putting on size. And like you went from 98 because you were at that plateau for quite a while. And like I remember talking about it whenever you were training to put on size, was like, I've hit a plateau. Like I feel like I can't get bigger.
Yeah, dude.
And then just started training like this and put on size. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and training becomes a lot more fun for me specifically. There's a lot of metrics around training for endurance, whether that's your VO2 max increasing on your watch and that being a game for yourself, or like your resting heart rate becoming lower over time, and seeing that. Those are like the wins for me. It used to be like looking in the mirror and maybe you look a little bit bigger, but now the wins are a lot more different. Like if my resting heart rate is in the 40s, that's a huge win for me. Like I'm becoming a lot more efficient. I'm becoming a healthier human. And I think that's why I like Hyrox so much.
And I think you just feel different too. Like different. No shade against people that just lift, because like I did that for a long time too. Yeah. But I think like your body and like you just feel good whenever like you're training endurance.
I think that a strong foundation in strength training is required though.
100%.
Because if you don't have that foundation, you'll get hurt so fast training endurance. Like if you just ran or just whatever it may be, dude, you're much more injury prone. Like the strength foundation is almost, I would say, a requirement at this point.
I'd agree. Yeah. So yeah, let's bounce into like a few weeks out. My next question, actually, because I did have the two, was, so I know for training for like a marathon or like a half marathon, whatever race it may be, volume increases as it goes on. Yeah. I'm wondering like Hyrox, because I don't know this myself. Like does the Hyrox intensity or like volume increase as you're getting closer to your event? Like do you have like peak weeks in Hyrox training and then like deload weeks in Hyrox training leading up to the event, or like what's that look like?
I want to preface this with I've only done this one time. So my experience here is going to be slim to none, but I did learn a lot leading up to my first event on like how I would do it differently next time, and listening to people that are the best in the community at it. I can kind of share what I've learned, but I'm not going to phrase it of like, this is what you should do, because I think personally that I messed it up. But yeah, volume leading up, running volume did continue increasing, and I increased it up to about, I think Billy and me had it at about 45 to 50 miles a week. And then, the Hyrox circuits, I started making more and more intense. And then just simply, about a week out, I deloaded. And this is the mistake that I think that I made. I think that I deloaded, not gradual enough. It was more of like a complete halt, because leading up to about 2 weeks out, I was still training really hard, running the same weekly like volume. But then the week of, obviously we dropped it down to let my body recover. But I think if I redid it the next time, I would start doing that 2 weeks out and drop it a little bit slower. So if I was running 45 miles, which next time I'm going to run less, but if I was running 45 miles, I may drop it to like 38-ish that next week, and then drop it to 30 the week after that. But I probably would have done erg work leading up to like 2 days out from the event. I just completely like halted about 3 days ish, and then just did kind of like shakeout runs and that kind of thing. And it was, I don't think it was an effective deload. If anything, I think that I backed off too sudden, too quick, and my body didn't really, one, have enough time to recover, or two, I don't think I was doing enough leading up to the day of the race. So what I would do next time, if anyone wants to learn from this, is 2 weeks out, I would gradually start decreasing volume and doing more Hyrox specific work. So mixing in a lot of the ergs. And yeah, just monitoring my intensity more, probably only doing one really hard workout 2 weeks out, and then no like super hard work, but probably just very short intervals about 3 days out. And when I say short intervals, I mean like if you're running, doing like a 4x400 where you just get your heart rate up and just kind of back it down just to increase blood volume. So your body is primed and ready, but you're not taxing it.
Right.
Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if like the lack of like dropping your volume quick enough, or like not doing enough leading up, like I guess can lead to like feeling like lethargic,
No doubt.
The day of,
Yeah.
and just not feeling like fresh and ready.
Yeah.
Especially if you back off like too sudden to the race, or I guess if you have like too much volume going into it.
Yeah.
But did you feel like lethargic the day of?
Yeah. And now we can step into this because I wanted to talk about this as well. Because you mentioned that I was like one of the most disciplined or dialed people that you know when it comes to nutrition. And this is a mistake that I made. So when you travel, obviously things aren't going to be as dialed as you would like. And that's just the reality of it, dude. I'm the type of guy, like I'm bringing beef and rice to a gas station with me and heating it up. Just because,
whole way down.
Yeah, just because like I want my body to be used to the same foods. Like I don't want to switch it up a ton. But if you're in an airport or if you're in an Airbnb like us where the grocery store happened to be 30 minutes away, and you're kind of scrambling for food a lot of the time, I was so used to routine that, and that I got pissed off really easy whenever it was like, okay, I don't have enough food. I was used to eating 6 times a day. So the advice I would give in this instance is race week or leading up to the race, a lot of times you're going to be traveling. The Hyrox or the race isn't going to be in your hometown.
Yeah.
So your nutrition is going to look a little bit different. This is where I think being an athlete comes into play, and you just have to be okay with it looking a little bit different than usual.
Gotta be good at like adapting. And
yeah, dude, because even like the race itself, like we competed at like 6 or 7 p.m. at night. I was used to going to bed at like 9 p.m. You know what I mean? It was a really weird vibe for me, but it's like in that moment, the real athletes are going to compete, dude. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, my nutrition may not be exactly how I wanted it to look, and I may not be competing at the most ideal time and all that, but like if you have the right mindset, it's just like I'm gonna fucking win regardless. So yeah, was more lethargic because I didn't have as much food as I would have liked leading up, and just training time was a little bit different. But learning lesson from there for me is like, dude, when you're traveling, it's not gonna be the most ideal, but all of the work is already done at that point. You just have to make sure you're getting in the nutrition as best as you can, and you got to control your mind at that point in time.
Yeah. And I guess too then, so now we're kind of at the point, like race day essentially. These races are Hyrox specifically because it's newer to the U.S. Is in metropolitan areas. So these events are in like busy towns, and a lot of them people are involved.
Yeah.
And these races are huge. So like, walk us through like what that was like, I guess the day before whenever you had check-ins.
Yeah.
Like that feeling. Cause I know like everyone gets that feeling like whenever race days the next day. And
Well,
like,
first of all,
you go to check-ins and like you see how many fucking people are there. And it's, yeah.
First of all, I'm an idiot and signed us up for doubles open.
Yeah.
And we were almost about to just accept our fate. Like, all right, we're going to compete in just the open, which is just the lesser weights. It's not as heavy weights. It's a little bit easier. But for me, I was like, no way. I trained this long for it, and Billy did too, and that we're just gonna compete in the open. Like I want to compete in the pro. If we did well in the open, it would have been in the back of my mind of like, yeah, but there's still another level up that I don't know what it's like. So we ended up being able to get it changed to the pro the day before. But walking in the venue, I kind of want to describe that and what that was like, because I was expecting it. Don't get me wrong. I was expecting it to be busy because there was a lot of hype around this race. But dude, there were so many people and so many athletes. And when I say athletes, I'm saying people that are very fit.
Yeah, you look around and you're like, this is different.
Yeah, you immediately realize like, wow, I am you think you're good, or that you think that you're on track, you're like, wow, there are different breeds that live on this planet.
Yeah.
And there's just a ton of people, but the atmosphere is amazing, dude. There's so many people who are super supportive. Like even the warm-up area was super cool. The warm-up area, you talk to a lot of people. Like nerves are high, but the way I would describe the atmosphere is just super live. Like they're blasting music. The speakers are really super loud. People are running, pushing their limits all the way to the end, and people are screaming. And I think the coolest part about it is how close people can get while you are competing as well. Like people are literally right on the fence, like right behind you, yelling and shit the whole time. So
yeah, like kind of like how I describe it, because I got to see it from like a different perspective, I guess, as like someone just watching. It is obviously inside, but like when you're outside at like a race or like a run or something like that, like there could be a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like you don't have that energy. The energy that like I describe is like a packed out like basketball stadium. Yeah. Like, you know, those feelings whenever like you go to a basketball game and it's just packed out and it's just live in there. Like music's on, like it's like pregame warm-ups, like that type of thing, and like the whole stadium is just like super loud. Like that's almost like kind of how it felt like being in like the event center with like that going on. And that's what opened my eyes to Hyrox, is like, yo, this is more than just like like this event. Like this is just fun. Like, this just looks fun.
We'll get into the so like as we're warming up, you're just kind of out in this like carpeted area, just chilling. You're stretching, you're foam rolling, and it's 6:30 p.m. at night. Like it's definitely just a different vibe. It's dark outside. I was used to going to sleep in like 2 to 3 hours, so my body is like, okay, something's definitely going on here, because we're ramping up. Nerves are super high. And when you go into the warm-up area, this is the point where you kind of start running on the treadmill. You get your heart rate up on the ski, the row. Some people were doing sled push like full out and pull. And for me, I still don't think even next time I would do that. Like a full-on sled push and sled pull right before you have an hour of just all out.
I know how that messed me up.
I'm good. I'm probably just gonna get my heart rate up to like a zone 2, 3, and then just, you know what I mean, slight sweat, like just kind of get warm and then just ride it out. But this is the coolest part of the race. If you do get to do a Hyrox at some point in time, you'll know exactly what I mean. Whenever they call your heat's time, they take you into this tunnel, and it's enclosed, and there's TVs up in front of you, kind of counting down, and they have like a race coordinator tell you like, okay, whenever you pass the rock zone, you're going to pass it this many times before you can enter. And your brain is racing at this point. So they're like telling you how many times you're going to pass the in or the out before you go into the in. And you're like, I don't know why this doesn't make sense to my brain right now, but you're kind of confusing me, G. I'm not going to lie.
Why'd no one describe this like 2 weeks leading up?
Yeah, and then you start running, and then sure enough, you're just like, I'm like, Billy, like, how many times have we passed it? He's like, one more, and then he'd ask me the same thing.
Yeah, no, on that too, we talked to like 2 or 3 different people afterwards that said they accidentally ran like an extra 1 or 2 laps.
Oh, that's a thing. It happens all the time.
Yeah, so people are running like 6 miles instead of
4.8 or whatever. But yeah, like that countdown, and then right when they say go, you just take off. And don't get me wrong, this was the point where we had to stay super disciplined, because we knew we were going to try to hold 7-minute flat, minute per mile paces pretty much the whole time. And this is where I kind of just let Billy do his thing, because Billy is a better runner than me. And that's kind of how you work your partnership. And I think that Hyrox doubles is a completely different sport than Hyrox singles. So when I'm speaking on this, I'm speaking about Hyrox doubles. That's my experience, because you're kind of playing off of each other's strengths to get the best time versus, dude, Hyrox just singles by yourself is a different breed. And if you're competitive in Hyrox singles, all respect to you. I'll do singles eventually, but it is a completely different sport. But he was just holding pace out in front of me the whole time. And this was the funniest part for me. Right when we started running, we were probably about the first lap. So we had ran like a quarter of a mile. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm feeling good. I'm kind of chilling. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, we're probably holding like a 6:45, 7 flat. And I'm just like zooming, right? And I'm smiling and shit like that. And I look down at my watch. My beats per minute was 175. like the gas gauge, you know, like, or the RPMs are just like all the way.
Yeah.
I had never seen my watch just hold that
That's
whole time.
awesome.
And my first thought was like, I don't know if that should be happening. You know what I mean? I think it's just the adrenaline and
like
whatnot.
race nerves and
Yeah, but it stayed there for a second, probably all the way through the ski. And then after the ski, it definitely leveled out. And this is what I mean. It became very obvious after the ski, the people that were that had like trained for it, I would say, because there was a lot of people that kept up in the very beginning. But after the ski, people just like dropped fast because, dude, it's so easy to just go out quick as hell. But it's a long race. And I will say, if we're talking about events specifically, a lot of people think that the race starts after the burpee broad jumps, because the burpee broad jumps end up absolutely just
frying you,
torturing most people. But no lie, for me, and these are later in the race, the lunges, I think that it started after the lunges for me, because the lunges, dude, you've already been running for however long, and then you're lunging 75 pounds on your back. And this is where I said I thought that my training is going to change a lot going into the next race. Is, dude, I squatted heavy the entire time. And this is where Billy is like, yo, this is your strength. You got it, bro. You're just going to crush these. Dude, being able to squat 350 or 405 for reps, whatever it may be, is way different than doing multiple high volume lunges with 75 pounds after running however many miles as fast as you can.
Not even just running, dude, like pushing the sled and rowing like kills your quads and legs. Like insane.
I will say I got this from watching Hunter McIntyre, but when you do the sled, pushing it for like a 5 count and then resting for a 5 count, pushing it, dude, that helped a ton. Like everyone, I think when people were watching, if you don't know about Hyrox, you see someone do that and you're like, oh, they're struggling. But it's like, no, that's just like, that's a strategy. Because if I just sit there and push the sled all the way across, which you could do, and then all the way back, you'll be fine. But I'm telling you, it's so hard to get your heart rate down from that after it gets that high, after pushing the sled for that many consecutive seconds.
And then you gotta go run.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I remember seeing people in the crowd, like spectators, like yelling at their people, like whenever like they take a break and be like, come on, like you got it, like you're good. And then you're just like, yeah, bro, like
I'm doing it on purpose. Yeah. But yeah, I think if you want to talk like hardest part of the race, for me, it definitely was after the lunges, because after the lunges, we started to realize how we were pacing, and we had never raced before, obviously, and we just said that sub 1 hour was the goal, and we had really, I don't want to say no idea, but kind of just, feeling it out for the first time. I would say after the lunges is when we realized like sub 1 hour is a very like unlikely thing at this point. Yeah. So that was kind of a low point to think that like, damn, we were all out and we're still that far away. But when you finish the race, you realize, dude, people that are doing an hour and below are elite athletes. Like they are very, very conditioned. And I think that that's the coolest part about endurance is like, you're only getting that sub 1 hour if you've put a lot of time and specifically years into something. And that's where the respect comes from for me, dude. Seeing people do below an hour, or seeing people get like 56s and 8s and shit like that. dude, there's just so much respect for that because
like
you know how fast you have to run to do that. It's impressive, dude. And we ended up getting like the 106.
Which I think is a great first.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, was I like, because I wanted to do a sub 1 hour. Was I bummed at first? Yes. But then you learn more about Hyrox and you realize that's very common for your first race to not be what you thought it would.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I was happy with it because there's a lot of things we can improve on going into the next race. Like, we'll definitely practice our sandbag transitions. That was a big one that probably took up a lot of time. Our rocks zone transition time, because, like, as you do the events and you're running past, there's, like, water tables and shit like that. You can kind of spend too much time grabbing drinks and whatever it may be. So I think spending more time just kind of getting after it. I may carry a gel with me next time, just so that's always in my pocket and I don't really have to spend time trying to grab my water as I run by.
Seems like there's a lot more strategy to it than you think.
Oh, a ton.
Like just shaving off like seconds almost. Like you're 6 minutes away from like doing an hour.
Yeah.
Which is like essentially the goal. Mm-hmm. Like you're literally looking like how can I shave off like 20 seconds here?
Yeah.
How can I shave off like a minute here?
Yep.
How can I shave off like this? It's almost like you take it back to like track days where like you practice like taking the baton or whatever you call that thing.
Yeah.
From like your partners and like you just practice
over and
that.
over just to shave a couple seconds off. It's the exact same idea. And I do want to mention here, kind of not on the same topic, but I think the coolest part, if you're thinking about doing a Hyrox, if you went and watched one, watching the wall balls at the end, you'll want to do a Hyrox. I don't think you can watch people do the wall balls and finish the race and not want to do one.
That's the coolest part, yeah.
Dude, you have these people who have been to their absolute max for an hour straight, and some people doing 100 wall balls straight, unbroken, just absolutely sending it, and then running through the tunnel at the end. That feeling is unmatched, dude. Like running through that tunnel and seeing like you and your partner's name pop up at the top, and obviously like at that point, me and Billy hugged each other and we're just like, holy shit, because we just knew how much time and phone calls and training sessions had went into that. Dude, I remember even during training for it, there were a couple training sessions, and this is the shit that no one talks about. There were a couple training sessions training for that I just failed the session all in one. I remember one session being super dizzy during the ski and almost like falling backwards just because, you know, like it adds up. Like if you're working while training for something that intense, and sometimes like your brain is just fried. I remember one session having to call Briley on a long run in like the middle of the night in Carbondale because I was about to shit my pants.
I was on the phone with you whenever that happened.
Never forget that.
That's
dude.
Awesome, yeah.
Because I was on a long run and I knew there was a bathroom about like a quarter mile up from me. And you know how like when you're about to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I start
and, like you're almost there and like you know that you're about there, so like it starts, you know.
Oh, it starts creeping for sure. So I started dipping, dude. I started dipping like and get up to the bathroom, and apparently they lock them like past 8.
That has to be the worst
8
feeling
p.m.
in the world,
brother.
Grabbing the handle and realizing
I was
it's
immediately
locked.
like,
you're like,
I'm about to shit on the sidewalk right here. But then there was people that walked by me at that point, and I'm like, no way I can get caught with my pants down like this. No way. So I ended up calling Brad. I should have just went in the woods looking back. You know what I mean?
That is so funny.
But we had a lot of sessions like that that just you fail and you learn. So I think running through the tunnel at the end or the finish line at the end, it's just this feeling of, dude, I've thrown so many wall balls, and just seeing the last one go up and you finish, there is no feeling like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you chase. Like that feeling is incredible, bro. And that's why we're so excited to do the next one and to do NYC after that, just because we want to get sub 1 hour by the end of the year. And that's just going to take a lot of work, truthfully. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah, dude. And that shit, Hyrox is a lot fucking harder than you think. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's with anything. Like if you're training for anything, like anything can be easier or harder if you make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like just looking at Hyrox from like the outside in, like I think it'd be easy to be like, oh, like I train like to like my heart rate's high at like certain times. Like
Mm-hmm.
I could probably do this and like be pretty decent at it.
Yeah.
And you do the first workout and you're like, I'm not decent at all
No,
at this.
it's almost I don't want to say depressing, but I remember the first few workouts that I did when I thought I was fit, and you realize like, wow, this is a different level of being conditioned.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially shooting for like a time goal and like having like
Yeah.
a sub 1 hour.
I think that, dude, that leads me in. I want to talk about. I have 6 to 7 lessons that I learned from training for Hyrox that I learned this past year that I want to share with people. So that does kind of lead me into the first one that I'm going to bring up. But the first lesson that I have on here is not being the best at something or being the student is more valuable than you realize. So, like, if you're starting Hyrox or you're starting a new event or you're training for something new and you suck at it, there were a few workouts, I promise you, I thought, I may just not do this. You know what I mean? Like, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, like, this is kind of elite. It was harder than I thought. What did I get myself into? It's going to take a lot of time until I can get even remotely good at this to be competitive. And you start having those thoughts in the back of your mind. I can't tell you how beneficial that is, though, and how much it pours into the rest of your life to not be good at something or to have to be the student again. Because if you're constantly putting yourself in a position in your life where I feel like you're comfortable and you know what you're doing and maybe you're the best at what you do in your area, or I guess you could say like just town or profession, whatever it may be, you're not really challenging yourself. So that was the first thing that I took away from Hyrox and training for it. Was that not being the best at something or being the student is more valuable than you realize.
I like that.
Yeah. The second thing I took away is less is a lot of times more. And I know you hear that a ton, but for me, I can't explain how true that is. The way that I read that, though, is it's not that less work is more, it's that more intentional work is a lot of times more. I think if you're just doing the workouts or doing the volume to do the volume and to say that you did the volume, it's a lot different than having a few workouts that are extremely intentional and you got what you wanted out of them.
Yeah, because I mean, you can kind of say you're just doing the volume, just do the volume, and it's a lot of volume.
Yeah.
Like your hard days, like no matter how hard like you do push yourself, like you're not going to get as much out of it as you would if you were intentional with your zone 2 days where you kept your heart rate low.
No doubt.
And then you had a hard day where you could probably get way more out of the workout and like go a lot harder because your body is ready for it.
Yep.
Instead of just doing the volume, like you're saying, just to do the volume, and you get to a hard day and like you're already cooked from the first 4 days of the week.
Yeah, if you're cooked from a day that's supposed to be easy, you're taking away from the days that you're supposed to go hard to get as much as you can out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge lesson I took away. And I think that can apply to anything in life.
Yeah.
I think that could even apply to work or business. It's like a lot of times you can get caught up with the hours that you put into something or the time spent on something. And while I think there's a huge component of time spent in learning and understanding something, quality of work is always going to be more important.
Yeah.
Second thing I wrote down was routine and work ethic will get you there, but your mind will actually allow you to race. And what I mean by that is I'm someone who I think I've always prided myself on like work ethic and discipline just because it's like it's a huge part of my personality, like doing the same thing every day, being really regimented, routine, like you always know what to expect in a way. And I think that there's an aspect there of control, of always feeling like you have control. But dude, race day or race week, that I don't want to say that routine's out the window, but it's going to feel a lot different. So at that point, that's why I wrote down your mind will allow you to race, because you have to approach it, for me at least, from the point of view of the work is done. Now the only thing required is for me to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, like, I think that's where you find out if you got that dog in you.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, we talked about this last night, but you put on Chad Wright's documentary for me, and he actually, like, this kind of relates. He kind of talked about it, like these people that, like he said, there's people that train for these races. It could be anything that like are so specific about everything. Like they know everything that's coming.
Yeah.
Like he said, say it is 100-mile race, right?
Man, this is so true.
And or a last man standing, even more. They know what's coming at each point. He said that's their disadvantage.
Yep.
He was like, you know everything that's coming. Like that's what fucks with your mind.
Yep.
He was like, ignorance is bliss.
It is.
Like if
everything.
if you don't tell your mind what's coming and you don't know what's coming,
Yep.
it's a lot easier to get through it and just be like, okay, well, like this happened, like let's just do this.
Dude.
And I think
true.
yeah, that's
Alex talks about the same thing. He's like, dude, if you have to, if you want to relate this to business, it's like people that have like a morning routine, and I have a morning routine. But if you have to journal, if you have to say like your affirmations, and you have to cold plunge, and you have to sign it. Don't get me wrong, do I think there are benefits to all of that? Abso-fucking-lutely. But if you have to do that every single time to perform, Alex is like, I'm gonna mop you up, because like there's no way you're actually competing with me when you have to do all of that, because sometimes what's required is to just wake up and work, or to just go to the event and compete.
adapt.
That's all. Adapt. And it's crazy because so much is grounded in routine and discipline, but day of, you're just it's time. You know what I'm saying?
You almost can't have like
be kind of fired up.
Yeah, you almost can't really have anything in your mind.
Yeah.
Like you almost can't like have any like expectation or like
you can't be attached to anything.
Yeah.
That's what I learned last time, because I was so used to routine and things feeling that like that day, dude, it's going to feel so different. Like you just have to be attached to nothing.
We had a whole podcast on this. I don't want to take it back to like the 100-mile race, but I think it relates with like what we're talking about.
Oh, of course.
I didn't have an expectation for myself going into the 100-mile race.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just knew that I wanted to finish.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long it was going to take me.
Yeah.
Honestly, like if you told me before I started the race that it was going to take me almost 33 hours to finish the race, and I had to think about that the whole time that I was running, I don't know if I would have been able to finish the race.
I think it's the same thing of people in business. You hear a lot of times like I think I've heard Ed Milet say it as well, and Andy. Like if I were to be where
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
they were like, if I were to be at where I'm at now, and you would have told me like how much was going to be required to get here, I probably wouldn't have done it.
And that's crazy coming from someone that's that successful.
Yeah.
Like to hear them say that, like if you told me everything that was required to get to the point that I'm at now, that I wouldn't do it.
So you know what leads me into the next lesson?
Yeah.
Sign up and figure the rest out later.
I love that. Yeah, we talked about it.
Fucking, you got to.
Yeah.
If you know you want to do it, you just got to sign up and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, if you start calculating it's gonna seem really not sexy when you start calculating all of it. I'm gonna leave that one there.
Yeah.
That's it. Just sign up and figure the rest out.
And I mean, another thing Chad Wright added to it was like the bigger picture is scary.
It is.
If you take everything in digestible bites, it's a lot easier to get through it than it is if you look at the big picture, because the big picture it's a big picture. You know what I'm saying? It's scary.
Putting points on the board every day, because that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can't 10-run rule somebody off of one swing.
One step after another.
Yep. The next lesson I've written down is not one prep is supposed to be perfect, and that's what makes it a prep. I've said that before. But I think every prep is going to be different for any event, whether you're dealing with an injury, whether your personal life gets in the way, whether your professional life gets in the way. I think every prep is going to look different. But I think that whenever you put everything aside and know that you prioritize things the right way, you'll be proud of yourself in the end, and you can learn something from every single prep.
Yeah. Kind of like the first one. I mean, you dealt with a little bit of injury on your first one. I think you dealt with like some knee issues on your first one.
Yeah.
But you did have a lot of time to train, like before the event itself.
Yeah.
And like this time, I feel like
Less time.
Huh?
Less time.
Yeah. You've had less time to actually train because your foot. I mean, your injury's been going on for a while now.
Yeah, and I want to speak on that too, because for me, I think if you're someone that is dealing with an injury, or just something that's, and I guess you could call it an injury because it's getting in the way of training, but it's something that kind of just like flares up and it flares up bad, and then it goes away, and you feel like you might be okay, and then it flares up again. If you're dealing with that, it can be super stressful on your mental, especially if training and competing is something that you're super passionate about. But I will say what I've gotten out of it is like I realize what's important. And when I say that, I realize that like my relationship with you is important. My relationship with Briley is important. My relationship with the guys at work is important. And because I think you can become so consumed with training, and especially if you're someone that likes to compete and improve, you can become obsessed with it, which isn't a bad thing. But at the same time, when you are injured, it kind of grounds you. And I think it's almost God sometimes being like, hey, take a step back. This is what you have. Be thankful for it. Like learn. And then, okay, like get back to what you were doing before and you're good. And that's something that
Nick talks about it all the time. I mean, after what had happened with him.
It's true, dude. And I think that everyone's going to deal with injury, especially when you're training hard, like very hard for something. But for me, it's, you realize what's important and you prioritize things differently and you roll with the punches. Because I think, even for me, I think you get very caught up in like the Strava and the announcement that you're doing an event and kind of keeping up with expectations there. But at the end of the day, if you can just be transparent about everything, I think that that's what people respect the most, is more of just like, yeah, this is real. This was the plan, but sometimes it is what it is, and you got to adapt and adjust. And that's the reality of life. And when you do get to compete, you'll be that much more thankful for it.
Yeah.
The next thing I have written down, I have two more. I have, it's not about how you do it or how you did, but more about who you do it with.
I like that.
Yeah. I think it's so true. I think you mentioned it when you did your 100-miler, but for me, it was very true. And this was even for me competing with Billy. I think that it made our friendship that much stronger, just because you go through something extremely hard with somebody else and you get through the end with them and you saw it through no matter what came in your guys' way, whether one person was sick, injured, maybe one person wasn't performing as well at one point in the race and you finished it. I always think it's about the people that you meet and the people that you do it with, because even doing Hyrox, I've met a ton of really cool people, and I would 100% say that has changed my life completely.
And that goes back to everything as well, like even in business and everything in life is like, yeah, like the success and like all this stuff is cool, but like if you got to that success and like you looked back and like you don't have anyone in your corner, like was it even really worth it? Exactly. Or like, are you even really happy? You know what I mean?
For sure. The last thing is kind of along the same idea, which it kind of is almost the exact same thing, but I wrote down, it has been and always will be about the people first. It's not about you or any accolades, but showing people what's possible. So I would relate like the preps and the events to, I guess you could say storytelling and inspiring in general. I believe that anyone can inspire other people, and I truly believe that. That's why I say that I think everyone should tell their story, because I do believe that. I don't care. You don't have to. You didn't have to build the Taj Mahal to story tell. I think that everyone has a story to tell, and everyone has been through something that someone else can relate with. So that's why I put it's not about you or the accolades, but it's about your story and showing people what's possible.
I agree.
So what I learned from that was just like, don't be shy to share your shit. You know what I mean? Talk about what you do, talk about what you care about, and there are other people that are passionate about the same kind of things. And I kind of think that's our motto for this year, dude. It's like, that's why we started the podcast. That's why we post more. That's why we do the events, just because we're passionate about it, and we found a community of people that are also passionate about it, and that's what makes it fun.
I mean, you don't know how that can ripple out. Like, it could be one person. It could literally be one person.
Yeah.
And like, some people influence like millions of people, but you could influence one person, and that person could end up doing something that inspires other people, and it's just a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And that's why I do think social media is so cool. Because I think it gets a bad rap a lot of the time nowadays because screen time and things like that, obviously. But I think if you start looking at it more as a tool, I think it completely reframes your mind. I think it's a tool because you can meet people that are just like you. You can learn from people that you want to learn from. And I think that those two things alone make it a tool if you just use it in the right way.
Yeah.
But that's all I really have. I think that from here, I'm going to continue to document my prep for Hyrox Miami and share everything that I can about that. You have some pretty exciting news that you could probably just drop in here.
Drop on them.
If people are still listening at this point.
Yeah. If no one's heard already, I did get into Nick Bear's or BPN's Last Man Standing race on May 24th. So we'll be documenting that as well. Probably more exciting to document in that one than the Rocky Raccoon, just because of all the people and everyone that's involved with
No doubt.
BPN's Last Man Standing. But
There were how many people that applied?
2,500 people applied and 125 people got in.
Yeah, so we're going to go out there in May. This is before Hyrox NYC.
Mm-hmm.
And we're bringing Jake with us as well. So we're going to have someone filming the entire thing. And Jake's a beast, so it'll look good. And we'll post the entire thing on YouTube day before, leading up. Same thing we're going to do with the Rocky Raccoon, but we'll document all of it.
And I talked about Chad Wright on this podcast, but I'm coming for him. So
I hope he doesn't hear that one.
Nah, I hope he does.
Man's coming after you. He's just gonna hang out at the back of the pack and just
he's gonna laugh at me.
Just watch you.
Yeah. Hey, well, he hangs out at the back of the pack. I'm gonna hang out behind him. I'm gonna see whenever he's struggling. You know what I'm saying?
You're gonna be waiting a long time then, brother.
Hey, as long as it takes, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Man's went for 30 hours. He was like, I feel like I could go for 30 more.
Yeah.
You're like, all right.
It's a different breed. I'm excited to meet him.
Yeah, dude.
Or hopefully. I hope I get to meet him at least.
I'll probably talk to him on the course or something.
Yeah.
I'll have to say something.
Yeah. But nonetheless, guys, if you did listen all the way through, I hope that you got something out of it. Even if you don't like Hyrox, I hope you learned something. Maybe you're even interested in doing it from here on out. But we're going to continue to document all of these events that we're doing. We're going to continue sharing our wins and losses with them. And we're going to continue to talk about putting points on the board every single day and throughout the rest of 2025 and the years to come. So like we always say at the end, if you have any questions about anything or you just want to reach out to talk, we're both super active on Instagram, so we'll always DM back and love meeting new people, especially in this space. So, yeah, that's all I got, brother.
Yeah. Next week, we have one more podcast next week, and the setting will change. Yep. We'll be doing the podcast after next week in Texas.
Yep.
So y'all will get to see that one.
Yep. So next week will be before Texas, before Rocky Raccoon. And then the one after that will be the Rocky Raccoon podcast wrap up. And we're going to do that podcast literally the day after Rocky Raccoon. So that'll be one to remember if you're still, functional.
I'll be fine. I think the day after will be cool just because I did my recap on Shawnee Hills 3-4 months afterwards. It's hard to piece together everything that happened. This will be fresh on the brain a day afterwards. So I'll still have a lot of emotion from the race. And I'll be able to
share everything.
Yeah, it'll probably be more real in that point, but it'll be fun.
So we got some cool podcasts lined up. We appreciate you guys listening. This has been From the Ground Up with the Caldwell Brothers.
Bang. 3.